How you doing? Well, who I am isn't really important, but you clicked on a Supernova Productions video, so I'm gonna have to tell you their guide to not being a dumbass. Basically a list of what to do and what not to do when watching a Supernova Productions presentation. The first thing's pretty simple, something not a lot of people are gonna have an issue with, but it's important anyway, and that's to watch where you watch the video, as this contains tones from the emergency alert system that could activate equipment and cause a false alarm activation. It's a federal crime, but if you're like me, you commit those for the hell of it. This is also a simple one, but adjust your volume accordingly. This shit can get loud, and you don't want to get tinnitus. You also wouldn't want to end up triggering yourself if you have ASD, ADHD, or noise sensitivity, because we love our neurodivergent viewers over here. The next one is a little... This program may get into dark and triggering shit, so if you need to tune away, don't feel bad for doing so. Nova loves you regardless, and I do too. On the same note, especially with all the weird shit Nova throws into these, this video could become a strobe light very fast. If you have epilepsy or other photosensitivity, you might want to click off. Last one is also simple. Don't be a dick and repost this shit and claim it as yours. If you do, you might have someone visit you while you sleep tonight. And not in the fun way. Anyways, that's all I have to say here. Sit back, grab some snacks, and enjoy the show.
What makes something a god? Is it merely the belief in them? Is it something to do with having an all-knowing and all-powerful presence? Is it something that exists outside of mortal knowledge? The concept of gods has taken on several different interpretations, after all. Some saw their god as merely the statue of a golden bull, and believed it solved their issues. Some see their god as but a man born of a virgin who died for the greater good of the world. Some see their god as something that exists outside of our world, so great that it cannot be viewed by the eyes, and must have earthly ambassadors to carry out its will and messages. Many of these interpretations conflict with one another, and while some choose to disregard these contradictions and live in harmony with opposing interpretations, or even mend and reconcile them, others have tried to exert theirs as the sole interpretation, often leading to much cruelty and bloodshed. Despite these differences in interpretation, one constant seems to remain among all: the thorough hatred and disavowment of a deceiver. In almost every interpretation, their scriptures, tales, and folklore tell of someone claiming in bad faith that they speak for the gods, or are an embodiment of the gods themselves, and through following these false gods it often leads to the downfall of that interpretation, or the followers of the false god. This tale is no different. This is a tale of a man born into nothing. He was born into a family of fools who followed a religion of fools. At least, that's what he believed. He believed that none of the gods that this religion worshipped were anything, and since he believed he could see through this foolish theism, it was his right to use it to rise beyond it and become something greater, something he was meant to be, instead of being born amongst idiots. And so this man used his knowledge and cunning to study the lore of the fools, learning every facet of what they believed. The things he read only serving to further his belief that he was superior and his peers were fools. Eventually, he stumbled across a piece of folklore that intrigued him, one he saw as his key to escaping the lowly position amongst fools he found himself in. The lore told that a child would be born into a family whose devotion to the gods stood out amongst the rest, which juxtaposed their offspring, who, in turn, would be reserved and seemingly distant from the gods, the religion, and the fools. This would be, however, because that child suffered from voices and visions that he could not yet comprehend, voices and visions that came from the gods. It would be when this child discovered this revelation that his theism would shine, and he would reveal himself as the conduit of the gods' will, and the voice of their words. He would surpass all priests and practitioners in his knowledge and piety, and would become the ultimate leader of his people, who made sure they always walked on the path the gods revealed to him. This would sow the seeds of the man, and give him his scheme to rise above the likes of the fools. His upbringing matched the story perfectly. His parents were fanatical about the cult of fools, and while he was disconnected from it, he had not experienced any voices or vision, but to him it didn't matter. With his knowledge of the fools, he thought he could outsmart them in every aspect of the religion, and use his knowledge to think of visions and messages in line with it. And that's exactly what he did. His proclamation would first be met with intense skepticism, but as he spoke of his visions, and as his theological wisdom outshined even the most respected shamans and priests, many of whom had been alive longer than him, it was no doubt in the mind of the fool that he was indeed the messenger of the gods, and thus given all of the benefits that befitted such an honorable position. Unimaginable wealth, the finest of dining, ultimate influence over the fools, and he was treated like royalty. He had gotten what he wanted, and had seemingly risen above the fools and become something great. But as he reached the peak of his power, as if the gods he thought to himself to be fake were punishing him for his machinations, he found himself falling ill. Initially he dismissed it, and made sure the cult of fools found no worry in it. A human messenger is still a human after all, and subject to petty diseases, even going so far as to say that the gods already foretold that he would not succumb to it. But as the days and weeks passed, his condition worsened. It seemed as if this petty disease was not as petty as it seemed, and this would be confirmed when it was discovered to be terminal. The man was devastated and enraged. And all of the planning, study, and scheming just to have it all slip away at the apex of its fruition. And worse is, if he allowed it to happen, it would prove his vision to be the lie that it is, causing him to leave the mortal plane with everything lost and the legacy slandered, remembered as the worst man in the history of the fools. He tried everything, every remedy he knew, and every ritual he heard, and yet nothing changed. It was as if the gods of the fools were not as foolish as he thought, and they were now exacting their revenge for his heresy. That is, until one fateful night. He had just attempted another ritual in order to summon something that would help him, but it failed as well, and he went to sleep more bitter than before. But he awoke in a cold sweat to a dark, empty room. He tried to look around, but he could not move. It was as if he was paralyzed. The damnable sickness had already threatened to take away everything he knew, now it was taking his ability to move. He tried anything he could, to scream out, to flail, even to go back to sleep, but it was all in vain. Until, out of the corner of his eye, he saw a woman. Her features were obscured in the darkness, but in his crazed stupor he thought she might have been one of his servants, and tried to call out to her. No words came out, as had happened previously, and the woman still made her way over to him. She would climb into the man's bed, one fit for a god, and mount herself onto the man, staring into his soul with otherworldly eyes. The woman made no moves to seduce the man, however, only leaning down as if to speak to him, but no words came out. Instead, it was as if what she wanted went straight into his mind, and what she wanted was something that enticed the man. She would end the man's suffering and save him from his downfall by removing his illness and allowing him to live until the years caught up with him. However, in return, the man would have to allow her to take any of his followers that she wanted, whenever she wanted, and would also reconstruct the customs of his cult of fools so that their practices and rituals gave power to her, even if they were still in the names of the former gods. And if he were to break this agreement, the woman would return to claim him, along with everyone in positions of power in his cult of fools, as hers. The man, seeing the situation as merely a way to have his cake and eat it too, quickly accepted. The woman would then smile before wrapping arms around the man and resting her head on his chest, putting him to sleep instantly. He would wake up feeling better than ever before, as if he had never had an illness to begin with. His survival would cement another vision of his coming to pass, giving the fools even more faith in him, allowing him to fulfill his end of the bargain without suspicion, guising the charges as the will of the gods. This would prove to be disastrous.
This is a missing persons alert. The following message is transmitted at the request of the Freeport Police Department. A missing persons alert has been declared for the entire city for a string of recent disappearances. As of this broadcast, 12 individuals have suddenly gone missing, and their whereabouts are unknown. These individuals are Zavion Crawford, a 16-year-old black male who was 6 feet tall with black dreadlocks, brown eyes, and was last seen wearing a black hoodie with light blue jeans. Shizuka Yamsuit, a 19-year-old Asian female who was 5 feet 8 inches tall, with black hair, pink eyes, and was last seen wearing a green long-sleeve shirt with a green dress, and several gold pins attached to it. Maxwell Kenton, a 17-year-old white male who was 6 feet 3 inches tall with long brown hair and gray eyes, and was last seen wearing a gray hoodie with black sweatpants. Callister Hidden, a 29-year-old white male with black hair, dark brown eyes, and was last seen wearing a black trench coat and black sunglasses. Noah Smith, a 23-year-old white male who was 5 feet 7 inches tall, brown hair, brown eyes, and was last seen wearing a black balaclava and a puffy black coat. Julio Mendoza, a 14-year-old Hispanic male who was 5 foot 11 inches tall with long black hair, hazel eyes, and was last seen with a green hoodie and black jeans. Alesa Wazia, a 16-year-old indigenous female who was 6 foot 2.5 inches tall, with leg-length red hair, green eyes, dark facial and arm freckles, and was last seen wearing a black compression shirt with baggy white sports pants. Lucia Lerouch, a 6-year-old white female who was 4 foot 5 inches tall with short black hair, blue eyes, and was last seen wearing a pink coat. Alex Halprin, a 15-year-old white male who was 5 foot 7 inches tall, with dark brown hair, black eyes, and was last seen wearing a red leather jacket with black jean pants. Darla Edmonds, a 17-year-old white female who was 5 foot 5 inches tall with auburn hair, blue eyes, and was last seen wearing a light blue hoodie with tan cargo pants. Caitlin Stacy, a 34-year-old white female who was 6 foot 5 inches tall with long blonde hair, blue eyes, and was last seen wearing a blue business suit with a blue tie and blue dress pants. And Kano Mira, a 39-year-old Asian female who was 5 foot 4 inches with long black hair, black eyes, and was last seen wearing a black, shoulderless and sleeveless dress with forearm-length black gloves. All of these individuals last known locations with the United Church of the Deadlines on 1010 South Park Boulevard, with a few individuals such as Alex Halprin and Don Edmonds being last seen in the company of each other during a sermon, and evasive was and now Julio Mendoza being last seen in the company of each other walking off of the church's premises.
And we still have yet to find where they have gone, nor what may have happened to them. And to add insult to injury, whatever foul scourge did it while they were on our premises, seeking guidance from the divines, for only wanting to show their piety and walk in line with what's right. They were snatched away from everything they knew and loved. It would be bad enough if it were just grown men and women taken, but young children, who haven't even experienced the full gracious bloom of life the divines promised them yet, were also snatched by this evil. That is the ultimate insult. And rest assured, children of the divines, we will not stand for this. We have already made sure no one of ours would commit such a foul sin, so now it is our duty to find whoever did, and by the will and grace of the divines, we will find whatever heretics stole them away from us, or whatever foul dark force compelled them to leave everything behind.
All kids out of the pool for Adult Swim. All kids out! Adult Swim. All kids out of the pool.
I think it's time to blow this scene. Get everybody in the stuff together. Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's jam.
This is an activation of the emergency alert system. following message is transmitted at the request of the Freeport Police Department. Residents of Freeport should immediately close and lock all windows and doors. The police department suspects an emergency situation is taking place in the city, as a great number of new missing persons cases have been reported to the police. What separates these from the prior missing persons cases are the seemingly sporadic variants in how residents disappeared. Some of these disappearances match the description of the ones reported 48 hours ago, having gone missing near the United Church of the Divines. However, others have reported much different circumstances, such as people going missing from their own homes with signs of break-in, to people suddenly disappearing in both secluded and public areas, to evidence of violent breaks-in of missing persons' homes, but seemingly no evidence of a violent struggle. So far, roughly 15 more individuals have gone missing, while the original 12 remain at large. Due to this, the Freeport Police Department has declared a citywide emergency and has advised all residents to take immediate emergency precautions to maintain the safety of themselves and others. Close and lock all windows and doors as stated previously, as well as refrain from answering any knocks at the door or anyone attempting to enter your home unless it is an individual you know. To answer your door directly, preferably use a window or eye-hole to confirm the individual wanting to enter. If you have children, make sure to keep them in your sight at all times, and that they do not go outside. If you have a home phone or landline, try to only use it to check up on neighbors and relatives, or for emergencies. If for whatever reason you must leave your home, make haste to your destination, preferably in a vehicle. Carry a weapon, such as a firearm at all times. Do not carpool, or pick up anyone you do not know, such as hitchhikers. Make sure to tell your relatives and friends where you are going as well. If someone you know goes missing, do not attempt to search for them. Call 911, and give them as much information on their last known whereabouts as possible. Normal programming will remain as normal for the time being. However, stations such as WIFR and WREX have completely suspended regular programming to broadcast information and the last known whereabouts of the missing persons, including the original 12. If you have any information on the 12 individuals, or the recent 15 individuals, call 911 or the Freeport Police Department non-emergency number immediately.
The city of Freeport remains restless as it seems to be plagued by a mysterious set of occurrences over the last 3 weeks. Locals have been going missing seemingly sporadically, with no clear rhyme or pattern to the disappearances. It started in May-April with the disappearances of 12 people, with the notable ones being former Mayor Kate Stacy, young couple Alicia Wasea, and Julio Mendoza, along with esteemed college student Xavier Crawford. These were the owners who seemingly had a connection in their disappearances, as they were all near the local church, the United Church of the Divines, and it is expected that these 12 were all regular attendees of the church, going so far as to be dubbed the Divine Dozen, or Stephenson County 12. In the past 3 weeks, however, these disappearances have jumped in count from just 12 to nearly 100, with some days having no disappearances, some having close to a dozen, while others only having 2 to 5. The randomness of these disappearances and the unnatural lack of any trace has baffled the Freeport police, with them going so far as to declare a citywide emergency on 3 days after their initial disappearances, where locals were ordered to stay home as they investigated and searched for potential perpetrators. Though as always something came up, and even when under the order to stay indoors, people still went missing, causing the police forces to relent and lift the order. Additionally, locals in the police department suspected that the United Church itself was involved with the disappearance of the Stephenson County 12, as they've been around since before the city was officially founded, and most folk in the city claim to worship at the church, which would seemingly make it easy to do something like this. However, many ridiculed the thought, since there seemingly isn't much reason, but after a thorough investigation from the police, the innocent was cleared, with the church even forming search parties to look for the missing persons, though like the police, they came up empty. The event seems almost supernatural to most in the city, and small disappearances with no trace or leads are unfortunately common, but nearly hundreds of residents going missing without a trace leads to immense confusion, as expected, with many attempting to explain this for many different theories. Some believe it is simply a case of mass hysteria, and that the people going missing were just insane or had something snap, while others believe more darker prospects, such as the city of Freeport being cursed, or that the disappearance are divine judgment from the gods of the church, and potentially herald a significant event for not just the city, but the world at large. It seems that among all this randomness and differing theories, the only shared constant of the people of Freeport is grief, despair, and anger, which many have attempted to vent through morals, prayers to the gods of the church, to return the missing persons, or bring rest to their souls, or merely maintaining personal hope in their safe return or discovery by the police and or church. Others, though, have decided to make their grief and anger known in much more aggressive ways, seen through the protests that started last week, as they believe the police are either incompetent, purposely ignoring the disappearances, or even more sinisterly, potentially involved in the disappearances themselves. On some days, especially in more religious areas of the cities, protests have gotten so bad that it might have started, with the police needing to be allied to those areas to stop looting, attacks, and fight fire.
Activation of the Stevenson County Emergency Alert System by the Stevenson County Sheriff's Office. This is not a test. Effective as of 5:32 p.m. today, the Stevenson County Sheriff's Office has enacted the full mobilization of police forces in response to the ongoing violence across the city. All off-duty officers and sheriff's deputies are directed to contact their unit of assignment as soon as possible, or contact the Freeport Police Department or Sheriff's Office. Due to the intensity of the violence, lack of response to law enforcement demands, and general disruption of order in the city, the police have been forced to enact harsher measures to maintain law and order within the city of Freeport. Police have been dispatched to several areas across the city, mainly around South Park Boulevard and West Empire Street, North Waddell Avenue and Northwest 2 Road, South Locust Avenue and West Mosley Street, South Dillon Avenue and South Cattle Avenue, and West North Hill Street to respond to these bouts of violence. These areas will be under intense police surveillance, and any acts of violence reported or spotted will be met with arrest and harsh legal punishment. These areas should be avoided by residents who do not live there, and those who do live there should immediately get indoors and stay there. Do not participate in or join in the violence, as you can face injury or arrest. The Sheriff's Office has also declared a hard curfew for everywhere within city lines. At 7 p.m., all citizens will be required to return home and stay there until 7 a.m. tomorrow, with the only exceptions being for an emergency, work, or religious reasons. If you are caught outside for reasons outside of these, you will be fined and returned home by police. Repeated offenses will result in arrest. These measures have been enacted to contain the spread of violence and return law and order to the society, as well as to protect life and property. Should these measures fall through, or the violence intensifies, neighboring city and county officials may be called into assist in mutual aid efforts to stop the violence, or potentially the Illinois Army National Guard. Follow the safety measures listed earlier to stay safe. Repeating, effective as of 5:32 p.m. today, the Stevenson County Sheriff's Office has enacted the full mobilization of police forces in response to the ongoing violence across the city. Due to the intensity of the violence, lack of response to law enforcement demands, and general disruption of order in the city, the police have been forced to enact harsher measures to maintain law and order within the city of Freeport. Police have been dispatched to several areas across the city. Should these measures fall through, or the violence intensifies, neighboring city and county officials may be called into assist in mutual aid efforts to stop the violence, or potentially the Illinois Army National Guard. This concludes this activation of the Stevenson County Emergency Alert System.
The city he presided over was restless. but the man cared not. After all, it was only the fools being taken by the woman's dark machinations. They were the ones who she wanted, not the whole town, and the fools didn't even notice. They continued to revere the man, and ask him for his guidance and what the gods wanted for the town, which he could easily feign and dismiss by saying the gods weren't being straight with him, and that the visions were revealing little, which they swallowed hook, line, and sinker. After all, even in the lore of the fools, the gods acted in mysterious and enigmatic ways. Yet even though many of the fools had been satisfied, the common folk had not. Living in a constant state of fear, not knowing whether or not they or their loved ones would be stripped away from them was too much to bear, especially as the cult of fools brought them no comfort. And so they left the city, unable to live under the pressure for much longer, especially without their loved ones to help them through it. Week after week, month after month, the city's population fell. Even some of the fools managed to become wise and flee before the woman's influence took them as well. The small city had already been losing its spark before the man rose to grace, but now the spark had fizzled out. For the folk and fools alike, this seemed disastrous. For them, it was. The looming threat of the woman claiming the next person, businesses bailing, funding and urban planning failing, staying behind made the folk look like the fools. But for the man, this was a blessing in disguise. A helpless situation and a decreasing number of the folk, with the fools remaining loyal. It was as if the gods he scorned had lined up events for him to grab a hold of even more greatness and reach a new apex. He finally had what the people wanted: answers. He would proclaim that the gods had spoken to him once more and showed him a great many things. Although the gods were still being mysterious on why, one thing that was clear to him was the purpose: a test. A trial of strength, determination, and resilience, to see whether or not the fool's ignorance would remain true in the face of adversity that required wisdom. The wise ones who fled were never truly devoted, and thus they suffered insurmountable tragedy, while the blissfully ignorant who remained true to their foolish hope were the chosen ones, the ones who would be protected in the end. This was what the folk and fools alike wanted to hear. Reinvigoration occurred amongst the fools who suffered the harshness of the trials, reaffirming their devotion to their foolish religion, while the folk who stayed behind felt a new sense of hope in following the fools, and so they joined in droves, throwing their wisdom away for blissful ignorance. The numbers of the church expanded to the point where there wasn't anywhere in the city that didn't have at least one person who followed or preached its folly, which was helped by the fact that they now made the majority of the city after the migration of the wise folk. With this, the man gained more influence and control than ever before. Everyone knew his name, they knew his face, and gave him their possessions, wealth, hope, and love. With the rising numbers of the church and falling number of common folk, both because of their conversion to ignorance and following their wisdom, crucial areas of the city degraded more and more, allowing for the church to act as their substitute. Now, not only was there a fool to be seen in every area of the city, there was a fool in every profession. The city council had fools, the schools had fools, the emergency services had fools, and at the center of it all, the one pulling the strings, was the man who had reached new heights of power. He now not only had a gold fist from his unending prosperity, but an iron one to accompany it from the church's control over every aspect of life. There was only one looming issue allowing him to enjoy the fruits of his planning in full: his promise to the woman. So far, both sides had fulfilled their ends of the bargain. The woman's warmth shielded him from his ailment, and the man's followers were the woman's property to take as she saw fit. And the agreement had been working fine. After all, it was what brought the man to his new seat of power. But if there were no fools left to put their faith behind him, how much could he really enjoy that power? The man decided on a compromise to hopefully satiate the woman's desires. He would increase the necessity of the rituals in the personal and church lives of the fools, as well as making said rituals honor the woman even more, though still maintaining the guise that they honored the gods. The woman took notice and eased up on her side of the bargain. The disappearances would begin to slow down over time, with a scant few still occurring, but they were never as numerous, nor were they as frequent as they were when the bargain was first struck, cementing the man's vision as divine law even more, and proving that the fools had indeed weathered the trials, and were the chosen people of the gods. The decision that proved disastrous earlier was now what ensured the man his rightful spot at the top of society.
The following is a paid advertisement. Any and all claims, presentation, or messaging is solely the responsibility of the advertiser and does not reflect this station.
Thank you for tuning in, dear viewers. Do you believe in the almighty glory of the divines? If so, there has never been a better time to accept them into your life. It's unfortunately no secret that our once great city has gone through some hard times, particularly in the past 2 years, and many people have lost the hope and motivation to stay and hold out. But it's also no secret that, in the face of such adversity, the people remaining have found hope in the divines, and when we tell you why, well, it should come as no surprise. The church has been here since before the city was founded or even incorporated into Illinois, so there's always been people willing to worship the divines. What initially drew people to the church was the divine's sheer power and presence in our world. The early years of the city were rife with sorrow and adversity, similarly to how it is today. The folk of what was then Winneshay prayed to their gods for good fortune, but it never came to them. That was until one day. A man of the Winnebago tribe was born and experienced the prophesied visions that were entrusted to the Holy Deliverance. Eventually, he converted huge swaths of his tribe from their traditional Ho-Chunk ways to the way of the Divines, and they traveled to the community of Winneshay, founding the United Church of the Divines, and subsequently becoming the first ever Holy Deliverance. Initially, the white settlers saw them as heretical to the majority Christian order, but as the Divines brought the new sect of Winnebago people their godly fortune, they eventually saw the truth and converted to the way of the Divines as well as establishing a peaceful coexistence with the Christian settlers who didn't wish to convert. After this historic peace was established, the city seemed to flourish out of nowhere. Commerce from Germans in Pennsylvania and their home country flooded the city, giving us our iconic pretzel identity. Economists and farmers from all across northern Illinois, especially from Chicago, came into the city, boosting its economy and putting the pretzel city on the map. Today, we have an oddly repeating story of our founding days. Ever since the unusual tragedy befell our great city, things have never been right. Families have been permanently separated, generations have been lost forever, and our safety is ultimately unknown. It's been hard on all of us, and has ultimately tested us no matter what faith we believe in. People have cried out to their gods, their prophets, wondering, why? Why allow such tragedy to befall us? You said you loved us. You said you would promise us good fortune if we stuck with you. But as it did back then, the test of the divines weeded out the unworthy and left the faithful ones with fertile, prosperous land. Our holy deliverance has guided us through this tragedy as the founding deliverance did, and the city is much better for it. The church has locations all across the city, allowing for more people to easily worship the divines. The church has provided assistance and funding to the local police and fire departments, saving many lives and keeping the community much safer. Even commerce and population has seen an incline. It's been slow, but it is steady, and it's there, further proving the glory and prosperity the divines can bring when we remain loyal to their greatness and suffer their tests. If all of this has convinced you of the truth and you would like to look into following the way of the divines, you can start right now with this prayer on screen. If it goes by too quickly, don't worry. You can always record this and save it to your DVR.
In pectoribus nostris, attissimerate, et in mentibus nostris salatum gaudim est. Disum nobis utindim minimus non indulgimus, in nos metipsos gosernos. Sed hoc facit, ut magis id carimus. Hoc est quod sumus, per in nostre persone. Nejamus hoc tantum EAS tam glorisium. Etiam urgentius quam calam ipsum. Indulgimus te. Cum magis lux caeli umbrum in donos serpentis urgict. Io magis debemus indulgerum. Te ipsum amite in serpente. Te ipsum amite in tuo gaudio altissimo. Te ipsum amite in te ipsum. Hoc est versus modus vivendi. Tua vera humanitas. Amplexare superti.
All done? Well then, you, my friend and sibling under the divines, have just thanked the gods for investing in you all the pleasures and displeasures that you have and will ever experience. You have promised that you will never take them for granted and will indulge and face them when the time comes, but abstain and hold firm against temptation when in the face of their glory. I welcome you with open arms and unyielding love. But don't let your devotion end here. We can be found easily all over the city. After all, it's not just the glory of the divines that makes people stay with us, but our loving and accepting community as well. You can find us at the United Church of the Divines at 1010 South Park Boulevard, the Holy Divination Church at 1320 South Blackhawk Avenue, the Winnebago First Church at 125 East Empire Street, Church of the Siblings at 777 West Pleasant Street, and finally, the Seton-Wacoa Missionary Divination Church on 607 East Stevenson Street. We do understand, however, that there is mystery from the divines, and their mystery may bring something unfortunate that could prevent you from making your way to the church. But that's no issue. We have several rituals that can be performed from home. Just make sure to write this down. You may recite this to any food item or wine you have in the house, and it will be blessed with the holiness of the divines as they claim it for their royal feast. Afterwards, you should burn the food item or crush it and scatter it across the land to offer to them directly, and use the blessed wine to bathe yourself. Maybe not literally, that'd be pretty expensive, but it could be as simple as pouring it on your head and letting it spread down your body, which would still coat you in the royal protection of the divine. Afterwards, you may rinse it off as you wish. I hope this program helped you see the light and truth of the divines, and if it did, once again, I welcome and accept you as my sibling with unyielding love and open arms, and I hope to see you with us at the churches around town. Thank you for your time, and may the divines bless you.
I just got back from the church, and I can't believe I never listened to her. I mean, I always found them heretical as a kid. I thought they were just sinners worshipping false idols, and when I lost my faith, I thought of them like I did any other religion, but it's like my eyes have been opened. I've been enlightened, and I haven't even been part of the church for that long, and they've already given me more love and care than I've experienced in my old church in years. And the gods they worship, divines we worship, already improved my life in so many ways. The rituals bring me so much comfort. They give me peace of mind, and they fill me with happiness. They give me the calm my soul needs after losing her. It's almost like I never even lost her. Like she's still with me, holding my hand and comforting me through life. Maybe she is doing that in a way. She was always big into the church. It made her so happy. Now it makes me so happy. I never found that type of happiness when I prayed to God. It was like he wasn't even listening. I was still so blind that I had the nerve to call these guys heretical, even though my so-called loving God let me suffer as much as he did. Even if he is real, that's not the kind of person I want to worship. Anyway, I'll probably be going back to church again next week, and in the meantime, I'm going to set up some rituals and shrines in my own home. The divines have brought me so much comfort. The least I could do is let them into my home.
It seems Freeport is receiving a reversal of its decline 2 years ago, receiving a massive influx of people returning to the city from surrounding areas, as well as new people coming in to experience their city's revival. The city seems to owe its revival to the ending of the major missing person incidents that caused the disappearance of the Stephenson County 12, as well as nearly 400 others at the peak of its devastation, with many of the folks reporting that the city feels much safer and their future certain with the incident over. Many of the newcomers report their interest in the new churches across the city, as well as the local religion in general, as many who worship it having much higher rates of happiness and satisfaction with the piety and spirituality than when they worship their former religions. The church has also provided funding for schools and food drives across the city, allowing better education for the youth of the city and families in worse economic conditions to get more aid, leading to a generally more positive image for the church in the minds of the locals and newcomers. There is, however, a much darker side to the string of success for the church and the city. A big few of the locals report some more unsavory practices of the church, such as animal sacrifice and desecration of the Christian rituals, with some even allegations of food and liquids being contaminated with hallucinogens and psychedelic narcotics. There are also some far more disturbing allegations, such as associations of ritualistic sacrificing of the former missing persons, as well as mixing the church holy wine with the blood of the animals they sacrifice, as well as indulging in satanic worship, black magic, or otherwise occult practices. The church claims that these are all unfounded and have no basis in reality, addressing the matter of their separation by saying that their rituals have nothing to do with Christ, as the way of the divines has no ill will towards the holy preparate, and that their doctrines have always enshrined their idea of religious tolerance. They do, however, own up to the allegations of animal sacrifice, saying that it's been a custom since their religion began, also claiming that every animal they sacrifice is done so in a humane and painless way, as according to the Holy Deliverance, the divines care not for bloodshed or theatrics. They care for spirit and devotion. We rely on animals for sustenance, and also giving them up for the gods shows great value and devotion towards them. Police and county officials have also looked into the claims of mixing blood, narcotics, and other contaminants into the delicious food and drink of the church, however have found no evidence of it in any of the churches across the city, easing the minds of many practicing and were thinking practicing who may have been turned off by the allegations. However, some of the more staunch anti-church locals alleged that the investigations were biased and unreliable due to some of the stakes the church have in the local police.
The man was overjoyed to hear of the recent news. What started as a disaster quickly turned into a profitable and exploitable investment, and ended making big returns for the man. Not only had he secured an iron grip on the city, but now people are returning in droves, allowing for the potential for the church's religion and influence to spread to even more people, giving the man even more fame, influence, and wealth. It was an opportunity that seemingly went straight from the divine themselves, blessing him for his cunning despite his cursed heresy. There was one major hurdle in his right to capitalize on this blessing, a hurdle that owned a share in his investment, his deal with the woman. He had promised the rituals would honor her in practice and that she could take his followers for herself when she pleased. The second half of the bargain had already caused issues in the past, but now the first part was rearing its head to give the man a real headache. People were starting to catch on, and if the situation didn't change, he would experience the fall from grace he was threatened with when his illness struck. The man would long ponder the issue, thinking of ways to counter the woman's meddling and maximize his profit from the city's prosperity, without actively breaking their deal. Eventually, the solution struck him, and it came from his own bargain. He pushed for the rituals to be more in her honor, so that she would take less of the fools, but with the city back on the map and more people coming in and converting than ever, the woman had a much larger pool of prosperity to claim when she saw fit. There was no need for the extra influence she gained from the man's rituals. And so the man began to set into motion his own machinations, separate from the desires of the woman's. The rituals would move away from honoring her to honoring him. After all, he was the messenger of the gods and had brought the city back from a certain decline into entropy, making it even better than before it faced its suffering. If anything, his presence on Earth and the importance of his visions made him akin to one of the gods himself, and was owed by the fools' worship as much as them for saving their sorry city and their sorry cult. He knew by doing this he would void his side of the agreement, and thus the woman would claim his followers in droves to make up for it as she had done the last time. But it was a sacrifice the man was willing to make. After all, with more fools coming in the city and the church, those fools being even more fanatical and blinded by their folly, high numbers of disappearances could go unnoticed compared to when the city was smaller and free from the man's grasp. The man would keep some aspects of the old rituals in place to honor the woman, but for most, they no longer honored her, neither in name nor practice. It all went to the man himself, the shadowy charlatan who puppeteered this entire operation. Food and funds were placed at his altar. People visited and prayed to him to receive his word on what the gods intended for them. Virgins lost their purity for his pleasure, while the woman received her pleasure in watching people invoke scandalous phrases in her name, desecrate hosts for her glory. And with the rise of the cult of fools, not just in the city but in the surrounding area, the man found himself in a seat of power, wealth, and fame more glorious than he had ever envisioned when he first plotted to deceive the fools from the inside. He had done more than just rise above the fools. He, in his own right, had become a god. He was untouchable by any man, and held the faith and devotion of thousands. And because of the warmth of the woman, he was kept cozy from the coldness of death that confronted him initially, meaning he'd enjoy his seat of ascension and dedication for as long as his life allowed for. He was truly in his prime, at his peak, and nothing would bring him down. He had fooled the fools, deceived the wise, and escaped the divine punishment of the gods, and now even had the woman under his thumb. The man was no longer the man. He was the Lord.
Do not make yourself known. Do not answer knocking at the door. Do not check out of windows, turn off all lights, secure all entrances, and have access to a ranged weaponry such as a firearm. The Freeport Police Department is looking into a string of murders that have occurred across the past 38 hours, with up to 23 people reporting violent home invasions. The details of these invasions remain the same, that being the perpetrator forcing themselves into the homes through destructive and violent means, often with windows being completely shattered and doors being completely splintered or broken off their hinges into tiny pieces. The scene of these home invasions also show signs of extreme struggle and brutality, with blood often being across nearly every inch of the entryway of the alleged perpetrator, as well as sometimes outside the home. The bodies or whereabouts of the victims are still unknown, as well as the whereabouts or descriptions of the perpetrator or perpetrators, leading to them to be presumed dead. Due to the severity and extremity of the situation, all residents are advised to follow the mentioned protocol above. Close and lock all windows and doors. Turn off all lights and seal all blinds, and try to attract as little attention to you or your home as possible. Do not check your door if knocking or other signs of attempted entry occur, including checking windows or viewing through peepholes. If you are driving, immediately get to your place of shelter and follow all of the protocols given. Do not pick up anyone you see, including hitchhikers or relatives. If you are forced to use your car as a place of shelter, pull over safely to the side of the road, lock all doors, turn off headlights, and hide under the seats. Should these invasions continue, more extreme measures may be taken, including mandatory curfew or citywide lockdowns. In this event, you should continue to follow the given instructions and stay tuned for updates.
Thy neighbor, and to hate sin, not Foreseer. Such blasphemous slanderance of his great name cannot stand. I hold no ill will towards this way of the divines, even if they violate two of the commands my Lord ordered all mankind to follow. But to hear them beseech the masses and slander and defile my Lord and the traditions he sets upon us is simply something I cannot stand for. They tell men and women to seek and indulge in their desires. They say that human desire, nay, human sin, is something greater and brighter than the Lord's kingdom itself. That we should embrace the temptation of the serpent instead of walking with the Lord. Not only do they spew blasphemy, but they also tell their followers to desecrate the body and the blood of our Savior, Jesus Christ. They use the same words and rituals to bless his body and destroy them, and use them to enjoy such sinful pleasures. Do you see this, Freeport? This is not the behavior and worship of the occult. These are not people with just different beliefs than me and my Lord. These people follow the devil. They follow Satan and his armies, and they say it loud and openly, disgracing the body and the blood, blaspheming the Lord, and poisoning his children with mind-altering substances that go against his creation and attention. And they have you all blind to it. I ask, nay, I beg of you, even if you are unwilling to renounce his heresy, denounce the blasphemy, and hold Julius accountable. I wish not to espouse division and hatred in our beloved city, but to merely live in peace. Our Lord and his Father will be disrespected and without evil taking hold in the hearts of its people.
Father, wait up.
What is it, child?
I just wanted to apologize on behalf of the audience. I may not agree with what you said about our ways, but you didn't deserve that at all.
I appreciate it, but you needn't apologize, William, child. I understand why they would reach so negatively. After all, I wouldn't be happy if my Lord was talked in such a negative manner. I guess that managed to seep in through my warnings, but I hold no ill will towards them. That's not what my Lord taught me. I only hope that my Lord forgives them as I have.
Same. The Divines don't smile on that type of behavior. It's not in our way. We're told to love regardless of whether or not it's returned. But aside from that, I want to ask if you're alright. I saw that a few things hit you, and I wouldn't want you to go driving off with a bad injury or anything.
Oh, that's sweet of you, child. But I'll be fine. I've been alive for decades, and it been hell for a lot worse. Some small centuries won't take me out.
I guess so. Well, I'm glad to see that you're okay, and I'm grateful that you have such a nice heart. It's really rare to see in times like these. I hope Christ and the Divines bless you, Father.
I extend the same to you, child. May you live a long life and rest with your Divines, Overlord, whichever kingdom calls to you.
By the Divines, that was a long day. Might have to take another bath after that. I need to clear my head.
Ron, you look like you've seen a ghost, and is that a bun I see? I'm so flattered.
What? There's no...
There is a way, Madeline. The Divines, they brought me here and let me see you again, my love. Aren't you a ball of energy today? What happened to the sensitive girl I fell in love with? Usually you'd be crying your eyes out. Not that I mind this new you.
Yeah, it's just... Ever since I lost you, I found peace in the Divines. It was like you were already guiding me in spirit, so I guess I never had a reason to cry. Your love was always there, and now you're here too. I can say that I love you again.
You love me, huh?
Of course. I've always wanted to say it again, especially after I lost you.
Well then, let's be together again. Forever.
What's wrong with your voice, Alexia?
My voice? It's nothing, just a little choked up is all. Not convinced? Damn. Usually people are too noticed to notice my shitty poker face. Honestly, I'm surprised you caught on with such a little head. Your love and memory of this woman is so moving. I wanted to see what you'd do if you could have her again.
What are you talking about? What type of sick game is this? Where's my Alexia?
Sick game? Well, sick to you, well, quite for me. See, I'm the reason you even get to see your beloved Alexia. You should feel grateful, Miss Antoinette.
No, my Alexia is with the Divines. They gave me her.
Really? I don't see the Divines stopping me. I don't see them making me give your Alexia back. Matter of fact, I don't even see any evidence of these Divines. It's almost like they're powerless before me. Does it make that you question things a little bit, Madeline?
No, that's blasphemy. There's no... Oh.
That's adorable. It's finally dawning on you, isn't it? All those rituals and prayers you did, everything you invited into your home, all of those words you spoke.
No, that's not true. You're lying. You
want to know something, Maddie? I was the one who took her away. Maddie, were you about to hit me?
The time has come again, my brothers and sisters, to put your faith in the Divines and cast your love to them as we face an insurmountable issue that tests our loyalty to them once again. Our brethren have had their safe havens and abodes ran through with everything being destroyed and their bodies being viciously abused, their lives snuffed out undeservedly and untimely. Not only has this put the safety and sanctity of our community into question, but it has also shaken the faith of many here, leading them to fall further into despair. Our ways have also been called into question by many, as others falsely label us as the most abhorrent and despicable things imaginable, saying that we worship the forces of evil, deceive our followers, and commit vile acts of sin against them. Some of them have even implied that we might be involved with the tragedies occurring in our city. The pressure put on not just Freeport, but the churches that follow the way of the divines has been immense, and many cannot take it. However, we must all remember that we have strengthened through this before. When our families and friends were being taken from us a couple years ago, we kept our faith in the divines and came out a better, more united, and prosperous city than ever before. Even our founding deliveress, Sedamokawa, was faced with issues. Our community was in shambles during its infancy, but because we put our faith in the Holy Deliverance, valorant and prosperous. The same must happen today. We must continue to put our faith in the Holy Deliverance and trust the divines with our life, as their word will guide us through this adversity, and their love and hand will reward us generously as they have
The man had witnessed the horrific sight in front of him, shaking him to his core. He watched as the fools were beaten and torn to shreds by monsters who were the faces of past fools and flooded his abode with the wrath and monstrosity of a tsunami. It was as if every time one fool fell, 2 more monsters would come to claim more fools. They were quickly slaughtering the entire congregation, and the man knew there was only one person who could be responsible for this, so he sought her out. He'd quickly flee back to his quarters, dodging the array of fools trying to escape their seemingly inevitable demise. Once one by one they flew past him, and one by one they fell to the ensuing armies of Hades. He continued to put foot in front of the other, desperately rushing to the safety of a god's room, unknowingly running straight into a serving girl in his erratic haze. The girl fell straight to the ground, but was seemingly unharmed and had managed to catch the man straight in her arms. When the man looked up to see who his captor was, he was met with beautiful porcelain skin, eyes bluer than the sea, and a long stream of blonde hair that felt warmer than the rays of the sun. The serving girl mused at the clumsiness of the man, scolding him for being so reckless in a time of emergency, saying that a man in a position as high as his should have a more level head, but he ignored the girl and tried to get back up into his quarters, though his body wouldn't move. His arms, his legs, nothing responded to the commands of his mind. It couldn't have been the serving girl, he thought. Her touch was far too gentle, and her arms were too small and weak to keep him down. It was not the girl who kept him confined, but his own body. It seemed as if the longer the girl had held him, the weaker his body became. His bones went more brittle, his joints more stiff, and his head more heavy. Suddenly the man felt nauseous, and soon found himself expelling his own blood all over the girl's gown, much to his horror. But the girl seemed not to mind. In fact, the fragile state of the man seemed to amuse the girl, despite the horror and hellfire occurring beyond their confrontation. It was deeply strange and disturbing, and stretched the man's already thin patience down to a barely visible thread, causing him to lash out and demand to know what the girl did to him, or what vile ruminations she committed against the church, is the only explanation in his mind as to why his temple was being overrun with hellspawn, and his body failing him was black magic and sorcery. Despite his cries, the girl cared not about his plight. The more fanatic and angry the man got with her only seemed to amuse the girl further. She merely put her thumb to the man's mouth, shushing him immediately before wiping the blood off and licking it in a slow, methodical manner, disgusting the man even further and prompting him to lash out again, but the woman would speak before he could. She'd begin to mock the man, calling him a fool for cursing her and trying to run away from the situation. She'd call him a fool for all of the things he had done in his life up until the point he met her. things no serving girl should or would ever know about him. She'd mock him for his arrogance in proclaiming that those around him and their beliefs were fools. Meanwhile, he'd been living a fool's life built off of fraud and deceit for years on end. She'd speak of his cunning in winning over the hearts and faith of people no better or worse than him, then casting it to the fire whenever he saw fit. She'd bring up how he always used deceit and manipulation to make things favorable for him and change agreements so that he'd always win, and that his arrogance deluded him so far to think that it would continue to work forever, even while forces were superior to him. It was then the man had realized everything. It was as if the stars had aligned against him. All knowledge of what he did and what would have happened flooded his mind in an instant. He had flown far too close to the sun, and he had voided his contract with the woman, and thus his affliction was ravaging his body quicker than any venom found in an earthly serpent. The girl didn't even need to say anything. The look of horror on his face admitted defeat as the girl's laugh turned into that of the woman's. Evil, malignant, and horrific, but the girl's face remained unchanged, as if the laughter was confined to the man's mind, adding even more insult to the girl's faux plainness, continuing to hold and caress the man gracefully, while the venom drew deeper and the laughs grew louder, as if even the gods he called fake were laughing at him along with the woman, finally getting vengeance for his repeated blasphemy and sacrilege against them. It was only when the girl's lips met his that he felt temporary reprieve, followed by an unholy hearth of warmth throughout his body, his soul confined to its eternal role in her dark machinations.
The situation has worsened dramatically. The range of the creatures has extended beyond the boundaries of the churches, and now pose a threat to the entire Freeport area, and may extend to smaller surrounding communities. And as such, all residents receiving this broadcast should shelter in place immediately, no matter where in the city they reside. Immediately get indoors and secure all entrances to a shelter, including doors, windows, fireplaces, and basement cellar doors. Close all blinds and turn off all lights so that it appears that you aren't in the shelter, and barricade set entrances with thick, sturdy materials, such as furniture and heavy components and parts. Gather any needed supplies, such as food and water, a battery-powered radio, and a flashlight, and immediately get into the innermost portion of the shelter with as few entrances as possible. Make as little noise as possible to prevent attracting these creatures to your location. If one manages to break into your home, refrain from any and all contact with the threat. Try to remain as quiet and undetected as or see the face of the missing relative. These creatures take on their likeness in an assumed attempt to lure victims away from their place of refuge. Do not fall for it and become another victim.
The floodgates had been opened and had consumed the sorry city in the horrific warmth of its flames. Fools and folk alike were claimed in droves by the woman's foul servants, and the city had quickly become destitute. Even the military forces outside of the city proved to be no match for the woman's overwhelming intensity, only becoming servants who pleased her whims and claimed more of their comrades for her dark army. Entropy had quickly taken hold of the city, and it was abandoned by the outside world, deemed a lost cause by those sheltered from its horrors. Fear had quickly descended amongst folk outside of the woman's city, that her greed and lust for darkness would leak into their own abodes and claim them as parts of her kingdom. Those in power used the incident to push their own agendas, grow their own power, or incite more fear into the hearts of men, women, and children, falling into the same pitfalls as the fool who allowed the woman's influence to curse the world and thrust part of it into chaos. But amidst this chaos, order and reason prevailed, and in the most unlikely area. Those trapped in the doomed city were not keen on allowing themselves to continue to be without aid, and so they began to advocate for themselves to redeem their home and bring back the era of peace and normalcy that existed prior to the fool's machinations. Of these advocates, two major groups arose, with the third one arising far smaller than the former. One of these groups posited the idea that the fool had revealed the woman's true power and allure. She had brought prosperity to the city, and only took it away once the man crossed her. And thus, if the city solemnly and unilaterally rallied around her, as the fool should have, she may return to them the prosperity they enjoyed. They would receive the direct favor of the woman herself. The other believed the exact opposite, that her darkness and destructive power proved the degeneracy in worshipping her, and that salvation would only come to the city if the folk of the city rallied behind the Lamb, who they believed was the ultimate enemy of the woman and had already defeated her prior. They would receive the favor of many of the folk who were fed up with the fools, and even some fools who had renounced their folly. Yet even in spite of all of the calamity, the cult of fools remained as a group alongside the other two, who themselves made their claims as to why they should be trusted, positing that their order had served the city for hundreds of years prior to the true fool's infiltration, and that without his meddling, they'd be able to steer the city back on the path to prosperity. However, they received the smallest favor out of any of the three, as they were ridiculed and disregarded, while their order faded into obscurity. However, as the two groups arose and received their share of favor, animosity and chaos seemed to be returning to the doorstep of the city, as the two were in stark opposition to each other, wanting nothing more than to eradicate the other and exert their full will and control over the city. It seemed that the woman no longer needed to set her influence over the city to destroy it, as the folk of the city may soon carry it out themselves, leaving the folk who merely wished to live out their lives in peace caught in the crossfire of conflicting interpretations once again, as they had been when the woman's influence met the cult of fools.